friends, my name is Jeanette and I want to thank you for joining me on the channel Jane Reads. So today I have some dual timeline books to recommend to you. These are books that I have read and have enjoyed and that I would encourage you to read maybe in the month of January. So for my Christian fiction bingo for 2026, one of the prompts for January is dual timeline. This prompt was given to me by the YouTuber Cora Mabry, and I encourage you to go check out her channel. This is her channel name here. It's the same as her name. And so I would encourage you to go check out her channel and wish her happy birthday in the month of January. So for dual timeline books, I have 14 books to share with you today. 13 of them are Christian fiction. The 14th is clean fiction. I did not realize I had included a clean fiction book until I was pulling the books and looking at the list and I was like, oh, oops. But I'm going to tell you about it anyways. I will also tell you if the book will work for the second prompt for January, which is Hidden Gem, and if the book will work for Epistolary January, which I am one of the co-hosts for that in January. Now, for my Christian fiction bingo, you could read a separate book for each prompt for the 2 January prompts, or you could read one book that fulfills both January prompts, which is why I will tell you if one of these books would fulfill both. So, I have this list in alphabetical order by author's first name, because that's the way my list sorted. The first book I have to recommend is The Edge of Belonging by Amanda Cox. This is set in 1994 in 2024. So it is historical. I'm hesitant to say 1994 is historical, but it is 30 years ago, so, and contemporary. So we are following Harvey, who is a homeless man in 1994, and he finds an abandoned baby. And he takes the baby in and tries to raise the baby. Then in the present day timeline, we are following that baby. So we get to know what happened to them and what happened in between. So then we flip back to 94, and so we are finding out the story as it progresses. I absolutely loved Harvey and his caring nature and the people around him that help. And then we see in the present day timeline what happened to that baby, what that baby is now going through. And there are particular characters who are there the whole way throughout the book. I absolutely loved it. There was a certain point where I knew what had happened because one of the timelines gave it away. But yet when we got to it actually happening, I bawled. Like I was just, yeah. So I read this book early January 2025, and it is so fresh in my mind that I've remembered this book. It has made such an impact on my reading. I highly encourage this one. And then the other Amanda Cox that I have to recommend is The Secret Keepers of Old Depot Grocery. This one follows 3 women of one family. We have the grandmother, the mother, and the daughter. And so we are following 1960s, 1980s, and present day. Again, these women just captured my heart, but it was really one of the men in this story that really, from the moment I met him, I was in awe. I don't know. There was something just how caring he was and how selfless he was. And then again, when something happens, I bawled. Amanda Cox likes to make me cry, apparently. So yeah, this was the very first Amanda Cox book I had read. And I've read more by her since because I just recommended another one. But yeah, I highly recommend it. Then I have The Codebreaker's Daughter by Amy Lynn Green. This is another mother-daughter story. This one is set during World War I and World War II. So we are following the mother in World War I and getting to know kind of her story, the friends around her, what she did. And then we follow the daughter in World War II, who we're finding out what she's doing as part of the war effort. And she's learning about what her mom did in World War I. And so this is a very character-driven story. I loved the characters. Some of the code-breaking letters, the work side, I didn't really care that much about. But I listened to this book on audio, and now I have a physical copy, so I'm hoping to reread it at some point because I think it'll hit different rereading in a good way. This one would also work for Epistolary January because there are journal entries in this one. So yeah, character driven for sure. Then I have The Secret Keepers of Old... No, it's not. Trying to repeat names here. The Secrets of Paper and Ink by Lindsay Harrel. This one is set in 1857 and present day. This is told by 3 different perspectives. Again, 3 women. We have Sophia, who is American. Something has happened. She takes a leave of absence and goes over to Cornwall. She rents an apartment above a bookstore and starts working in the bookstore, where she meets Jenny, who is the bookstore owner, who is going through some marital issues. And they discover a journal from Emily, who is the 1857 character. And then we're told there's a perspective from Emily of stuff that was happening at that time and her aspirations. And the way that the 2, Sophia and Ginny from the present timeline, really get to know each other and dig and help each other out. There is a bit of romance that happens on the side as well. And I loved this book. And I would highly encourage reading it. And again, it would work for Epistolary January because you have the journal that is being found. Then I have The Women of Oakridge by Michelle Shocklee. This is 1944 and 1979, set in Oakridge, Tennessee. In the 44 timeline, we are following Maybelle, who works at the K25 factory, and kind of we're learning all about that, the situation she's gone through, and why she refuses to talk about that time period in her life, even though now, like in the 1979 timeline, you're allowed to talk about it. Back in the 1944, that was a huge thing. They were in a secret city. You were told you couldn't talk about what you did, where you were, anything. And most people, like even coworkers, didn't know what the other person did. And how did the secret affect them once it came out, what they were working on? And so that is the 1979 timeline where Laurel, Maybelle's niece, I feel like I had the wrong name, but I don't. Maybelle's niece comes to town to research what the secret was all about and how the secret has affected the people after the fact once they realized that they were working on the atomic bomb. But Maybelle still refuses to talk about it. And why does she? So I loved these women and kind of digging into them. There again is a little bit of a romance that happens, but it's very off the page, very hinted at the end, but that's about it. And I just loved it. Like the family support and connection and the way family helped one another. Like, yeah, this was a 5-star read for me. Another Michelle Shocklee book is Count the Nights by Stars. This one is set in 1897 and 1961 in Nashville, Tennessee. I had to think about that. And so in this one, we are following Audrey in 1961, who works at the Maxwell House Hotel, and after a long-term resident has a stroke, Audrey is tasked with cleaning out the reclusive woman's room. And she discovers a scrapbook filled with memorabilia from the Tennessee Centennial Exposition. Then in the 1897 timeline, we are following Priscilla and her time at the Tennessee Centennial Exposition and a romance that possibly develops. But then when women start going missing during that time, what is going on and why? Like, how do the two timelines connect and what is going on? I really enjoyed the historical timeline. I was so interested in learning about the exposition that happened and everything that tied around that. I liked the 1961 with Audrey and a possible romance that happens, but they were just like, they were providing answers for the 1897 timeline for me. This was the book that piqued my interest about seeing the Parthenon in Nashville and like kind of researching about it and learning because it was built as a temporary exhibit and yet it's still there to this day. Why? What's going on? Like, I had to know everything about it. And after I read this book, because this book that told me about it, I didn't even know it was there at the time. I read this book, I found out about it, I'm like, oh, I want to see that. And then when we were planning our Tennessee trip, I made sure to make a stop there. So this was the book that inspired that. This one would also work for Epistolary January because they discover letters between characters from 1897. Then we have Hope Between the Pages by Pepper Basham. This one is 1915 and present day, set at Biltmore, North Carolina. We are following Clara in the present day, who is running her family bookstore, which is 100 years old, but they can't find the deed. And they are trying to find that because they need it. And then we go back in time to 1915, when we are following the female, I cannot think of her name, who is in charge of overseeing the library at the Biltmore Manor. And we get to see her form a relationship with a guest. And there are letters exchanged. So again, it would work for Epistolary January between the two of them. And then we find out, like, Clara is discovering this history from 1915 and what happened. And I loved the historical timeline. Those characters captured my heart so much. And really, I wasn't that invested in the present day with Clara, other than she was providing answers for the 1915 timeline. And The Wedding Chapel by Rachel Hauck. This one is set in the 1940s and 2015, and we are following Taylor in the present day timeline, who has arrived in Harts Bend, Tennessee to photograph the wedding chapel and kind of learn the history. She meets Jimmy, who built the chapel back in the 40s, and she's learning about it. Then we have flashbacks to the 1940s with Jimmy, and we really get to know him and why he built the chapel, what motivated him, and what's the history basically between 1940s and 2015. I really enjoyed both of these characters, but really Jimmy in the present day timeline, like, I liked him in the 1940s and the flashbacks, but like the present day timeline when he's in his 60s, 80s, can I do the right math here? When he's an older gentleman, just like, yeah, I read this book twice and I've given it 5 stars both times. Okay, so the books that I do not own physically that I have to recommend. The first one is A Token of Love. This one by Carrie Turanksy. I should say the author's name. This one is set in 1885 and present day, and it is in London, England. So in 1885, Lillian embarks on a journey to reunite with her long-lost niece, who was abandoned at the Fondling Hospital 8 years prior. She's fueled by her sister's plea and armed with the gold token that identifies her niece. Lillian teams up with reporter Matthew to expose the grim reality of the shadowed streets of London. As Lillian and Matthew unravel the mystery of Alice's disappearance, their partnership blooms into one of shared purpose and attraction. Then in present day, Janelle finds herself unexpectedly running the Fondling Museum. Filmmaker Jonas arrives to document the museum's history. But when Jonas arrives, their collaboration takes a surprising turn as they uncover articles from the past that shed light on a haunting connection to the present. How did the two connect? I really enjoyed learning about the Fondling Hospital, and kind of it broke my heart to find out how babies arrived there because their parents couldn't care for them at the time. They weren't just abandoning them. Majority were not just abandoning them. They just couldn't care. And they dropped them off there feeling that was the best for them. And then to find out some stuff that happened, it just broke my heart. But it was such a good story. And it would also work for the prompt Hidden Gem because it only has 433 ratings on Goodreads. Okay, the next book is The British Booksellers by Kristy Cambron. This is set in World War I and World War II, again in England. And we are following Amos and Charlotte from childhood friends to rival bookstore owners. Through the 1914 timeline, we get the backstory of the characters and what has led them to now. Then in the 1940 timeline, we are following Jacob, who is a lawyer from America, and Eden, who is Charlotte's daughter, along with Amos and Charlotte. The war is happening and Coventry is being attacked. We follow these characters as they are living their lives to save their homes and their community. And I was so invested in discovering what happened between Amos and Charlotte because we see them as such good friends, but how did they become rivals? Like, what happened in between? I was so invested. I had so many questions as I read, but they were answered the more I read. Okay, and then we have All We Thought We Knew by Michelle Shocklee. This is the book that introduced me to Michelle Shocklee, and I just absolutely loved it that I could not wait to read more by her, and apparently I have read more by her. So this one is set in, I wrote it down, 1942 and 1969. So we have Gunther, who is a German student in the US, who gets arrested just because of his association with Germany. Maddie returns home a year after her brother was killed in Vietnam and her mom is dying. Ava is a recent widow due to Pearl Harbor attack. We follow these 3 perspectives and discover their stories from 1942 and 1969. And it is set on a horse farm in Tullahoma, Tennessee. And I loved watching Maddie work together with somebody else on the farm, and watching that friendship relationship grow. There are some really tough subject matters that are included, such as war injuries, unfair treatment, death of family members, but I absolutely fell in love with these characters and was fully invested in this story. This one would also work for Epistolary January because there are letters being written between certain characters. Okay, then we have Meet Me at the Starlight by Rachel Hauck. This one is set in 1932 and 1987. It is set in Sea Blue Beach, Florida, where we first meet Tuesday Night in 1932, who is raising 2 boys while her husband is gone for long stretches of a time. She takes over the running of the Starlight roller rink. In the second timeline in 1987, Tuesday is now in her 80s, and we meet her grandson, Matt Knight, who is a Hollywood actor and returns home to help his grandmother save the roller rink from being torn down. Matt reconnects with Harlow Hayes, who is a model, but went into hiding after a relationship breakup went south. I enjoyed getting to know all 3 of these characters and following them as they work together to save the rink, learn how to deal with their struggles, and watch a romance develop. Over the course of the story, we get to know what Tuesday has gone through between 1932 and 1987. I felt like I really got to know her, and there were some really funny, laugh out loud moments in this one I really, really enjoyed it. The last book I have to recommend. No, it's not. 2 more. Okay. And then we have All of You by Sarah Monzon. Now, this one is a book 2 of the Carrington family series. Other than the fact that it follows a sibling of the Carrington family that you met in book 1, I think you could read these out of order. Like, I don't think it matters other than spoiling the relationship of like the romance that happens. This one is set in 1940s and present day. We are following Michael from the present day storyline and Alice from the World War II storyline. They are both pilots, and you know that their stories are going to connect at some point. But how? I was sucked into both, and I could not wait to find out. So Alice from World War II is a strong woman, and I couldn't help but be inspired by her strength and her desire to serve. The way her story ended was amazing. And then in the present day timeline, we are following Michael, who has gone through a very traumatic experience that changes the course of his life, but he has not lost his faith in God. Yes, he struggles and asks the question why, but he does not turn his back on God, but rather he asks God to show him the new plan for his life. So he ends up meeting Jackie when his teammate asks him to watch out for his sister while he's deployed. The two develop a friendship that leads to deeper feelings, but Michael is still dealing with the emotional challenges of accepting the changes in his life and feels that Jackie deserves much more than he can offer. However, Jackie sees much more in Michael than he sees in himself and is determined to let him know this. Will Michael be receptive to this, or will he stick to what he thinks is best? I loved these characters and the way the two timelines connected. Yeah. This was one of the early dual timeline books I read, and it just showed me how much I enjoy dual timeline stories. Okay, and then the last book I have to recommend is Hearts Under Fire by Cori Lynn. So this is the one that is clean fiction rather than Christian fiction. It is set in 1941 and present day, and it would also work for Hidden Gem and Epistolary January. So this book would fit all 3 things. And we are following Laura in the present day timeline, who is an antique furniture restorer. She starts restoring a trunk, finds a journal from Ava in the 1941, and she is reading the journal entries, and we get to know Ava and get to know her story of what it was like when people from the community went off to fight in World War II. And I just, Ava, I loved Ava for a majority of the book. But then there is a point where Ava's story kind of ends. We know what happened. And then we're following Laura. And I was so enraptured by Laura and what was going to happen that I did not want to put the book down. Like, yeah, this was such an enjoyable read, but it also deals with grief and sending loved ones off to war and like tough decisions. There is a little bit of a love triangle that happens, but it is so well done that it really did not bother me, other than I was rooting for a particular character. But other than that, like, yeah, I just really enjoyed it. Okay, and then let's look at did I miss any books? Oh, I didn't pull in my possibilities. And I did not tell you that All of You by Sarah Monzon would also work for Hidden Gem, because it only has 106 readings. That needs to be increased. Okay, my possibilities. Let me grab them. Okay, so I have 4 possibilities that would work for this prompt of dual timeline. 3 of these would also work for Hidden Gem, though. So that's like, if I can hit both prompts. The first one is Behind Love's Wall by Carrie Fancett Pagels. Pagels? I don't know how to say her last name. And I don't know exactly what the 2 timelines are, but it just says 2 successful women, 127 years apart, build walls to protect their heart. Modern day Willa is a celebrity interior decorator, is chosen to go to Mackinac Island and consult for the Grand Hotel's redesign. During work on a room, she discovers a journal detailing the struggles of a young woman, Lily, which reveals dark secrets. The renowned singer wasn't who she pretended to be. She discovers a journal. This would also work for Epiphany January, probably. Then, A Promise Engraved by Liz Tolsma. And it says, can promises made in times of struggle endure 200 years? Young, spirited Josie's life is about to take a turn when faced with political turmoil and secret love in San Antonio of 1836. John has won her heart despite being a Protestant preacher who is forbidden to practice his faith in Texas. If he discovers the secrets of her painful past, he will never have anything to do with her. But then comes the Battle of the Alamo. Will either of them survive the battle for liberty to create a legacy of love? Now, nearly 200 years later, Kaylee takes breaks from her demanding job as a refugee coordinator, working with Mexican migrants to attend flea markets, where she has found a uniquely engraved ring that helps her discover who killed her parents. Enlisting the help of appraiser Brandon, they piece together a love story long forgotten. But will dangers linked to the ring end her own hopes for leaving a legacy built on hope, faith, and love? And then we have In Spotlight and Shadow by Rachel Scott McDaniel. And it says, Eva has a habit of letting people down. Her former boyfriend, who hoped she'd be his bride. Her grandfather, who hoped she'd take over the family's auction company. But mostly, she's disappointed herself. What's the point of pursuing her passion as a violinist if she's too scared to audition for the seat in the Pittsburgh Symphony? Her internship at an elegant Heinz Hall places her in the wings of the stage, but never on it. By accident, she discovers an old stage prop. Her instincts tell her there's more to the paste necklace than meets the eye. She accepts help from a childhood friend who happens to be a country music megastar, Pearson Brooks. Pearson and Elise share history, one she doesn't care to repeat. The more involved they become in the mystery, the more things get tangled, including her heart. Then, a century earlier, we have Sophie, who longs for a center stage. What happens? Okay, and the last one is What I Would Tell You by Liz Tolsma. Determined to resist the invading Nazis, a Greek Jewish woman's greatest dream has become her worst nightmare. And this one says it is set in 1941 and 2019. I'm not going to read the full back here, but yeah. So those are the 4 possibilities for me. But I feel like this one just kind of moved up on the list because it would also work for Epistolary January. We'll find out. So those are the recommendations I have for you. I would love if you have a favorite dual timeline story, please let me know, because sometimes it's hard to figure out what books are set in dual timeline until you start reading them. I want to thank you for watching this video today, and I would love it if you would like and subscribe and stay tuned for future videos. Have a great day. Bye.